I'm Ryan, this is my brother Daniel, and this is Rolls in the Family. And today we are talking about the month of June, which for us was a pretty packed month of board gaming. We kind of had some family vacation stuff, time off from work. We got to see each other, get some games in person. And that made it tough to pick our top 3 plays of the month that we're going to be talking about in this video.
Well, it's hard to choose, some top plays when you're losing to Daniel all month. Isn't that right?
Yeah, I looked through and I was like, man, I didn't really enjoy any of these games. If you didn't know, we actually also have a monthly email newsletter that we send out, which does give us the opportunity to talk about some games that maybe missed this. We usually post some photos and give some brief thoughts on some other things that have been hitting the table for us. So there is a link down below if you want to subscribe to our newsletter, if you would like to. We also have links to all the games we talked about in this video. There are going to be some good ones, and we would like to also hear, what was your best play, the very best in the last
Was your June
month?
as good as ours?
Was it as good as ours?
I doubt it.
Yeah.
Prove us wrong.
Probably not, but you never know. But with that, always interesting to see if we're going to have any crossover when we play games together, or if we just prefer playing without each other. But, let's jump into it with Daniel's number 3.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm just going to spoil everything, Ryan. All of my plays are with you. So there you go. That might be the nicest thing I've ever said to you in my life.
I think 2 of mine are.
Wow. Okay.
2.5. Well, there's a kind of a caveat.
A little offended, but my number 3, Ryan, this one probably, if I had to say of all June was a fantastic month, but man, if I had to say the game that surpassed my expectations the furthest, and just honestly, it was, I would argue this was the hit of June. Yeah. My number 3, Ryan, has to go to Sausage Sizzle.
Sausage Sizzle.
I mean, Ryan, am I wrong in saying that Sausage Sizzle was the hit of the month?
No, I mean, it's a game that I picked up right before the vacation. I only played it once or twice, and it just consistently, throughout the trip, in different situations, delivered.
I know. It's like, what game are we going to play? And it felt like we just kept coming back to Sausage Sizzle. So in this game, it's got a little bit of kind of the, feel of like maybe Farkle or Yahtzee. You're rolling these dice, and basically, you're trying to either, you've got, is it 5 different animal six?
There's 6 different animals, and there's 4 dice that have those 6 animals.
Right. So you've got the dice that have the animals, but then you also have dice that have numbers 1 through 5 or a sausage instead.
Yeah, the ones are sausages, essentially.
Yeah. Although there's 2 different types of dice where the number, is on the
I always
on
when
them
I'm
are a little
explaining it,
different
I'm
and
like,
stuff
all
like
you
that.
really need to know is the oranges have only 1 sausage, the reds have 2 sausages.
But long story
5
short,
is the highest.
you're rolling and you're choosing what dice you want to keep, and then whatever animal you have the most of, you're going to multiply the number that you have the most of by that animal, and that's how many points you score for the animal. You can only score each animal once going around. But the big catch of it all is that if you keep any sausages, if you have any sausages at the end and another number, then you score a 1 times
your lowest number is
the lowest
1.
number. It's terrible. But if you can get all of your number dice to be sausages, it multiplies as a 7. And that it's just such a simple mechanic, but it creates so many exciting opportunities, because when you maybe do that initial roll, if you decide to keep, you really have to make a branching path decision. Do I want to go for just maybe a safer, go for the numbers, or do I want to go for sausages? And if I keep a sausage, you're now all in. Like you have to go for the sausages to try to get, and you're either going to get 7 or you're going to get 1. This game is just excellent at delivering exciting moments. Gosh, the amount of times where you were just exciting things are happening at the table. And what's funny about it, and I don't know if this is just the group or the game fosters this, but I found everyone was excited for other people's turns as well.
Yeah.
Like when I see someone else, you know, going for sausage and they're getting to that last roll and they've got one die and they got to get a sausage. It's either going to be a 1 or a 7. They got to roll a sausage in order to get the 7, and they roll it, and everyone at the table is, you know, goes crazy. Like, for a game that is that, you know, just small, to be able to consistently deliver exciting moments like that is super cool. And I found even just the decision making, you know, it's simple, obviously, in that and I think that's great because it's a very welcoming game. Gosh, you could play this with a lot of different people, really anyone who's, you know, any familiarity again with like a Farkle, a Yahtzee, but I think it just has a twist on those games that makes it so much more exciting. So, man, Ryan, we sizzled some sausages.
We sizzled
That's
some
all I gotta
sausage.
say about that.
Yeah, and I mean, I got the game specifically because I was like, I'd like to have more short, easy, maybe kind of end of night games that have that kind of more exciting factor to it. Like, I've got some games I can suggest that it's like a fun, interesting game, but it's not going to create those types of moments while still staying very low rules overhead. And I mean, this could not have worked better for that scenario. And yeah, we kept pulling it out. It's definitely one that, like, the group dynamic is important.
It is, yeah.
And so as the person running the game, I try to kind of, like, you know, start up the banter a little bit, right, on other people's turns or doing that, because if you can get the whole group kind of into it, man, and then when you hit one of those big moments, it really just, like, gets the game rolling. But I could see a group that kind of just plays it as the game and doesn't, and having this fall kind of flat if they just kind of like...
Right, that's a good point, yeah.
Because it's not like there's big strategic decisions here, and it's tons of luck, but it's leaning into what people like about games like Farkle or Yahtzee, that excitement of rolling and like, how much do I want to push for the bigger reward versus, you know, the smaller... I love towards the end of the game, because there's always going to be 6 rounds because everybody's going to do their 6 animals. I love making sure everybody knows exactly where they are in the points up to that point, so that people know, like, I have to go for broke this turn, which is fun. It's fun to go for no, you have to go for broke, and when it happens, it's amazing. So
I will say, like, even though yes, like, it is not a very, it's a very, like, lots of luck in this game. There are some really interesting decision moments of, like, okay, your first roll, you know, like, let's say you roll a bunch of the animal that you're trying to get, but you also keep, like, okay, 2 sausages. Well, it's like, okay, I could keep all those animals as well, but then that's limiting the number of die rolls that I potentially have to try to complete the sausage.
Because you always have to keep one die.
Because you always have to keep one. So there were just some really interesting things of, like, man, what do I keep here? This is hard. You know, if it's a bit of a gamble if I keep more.
There's no right answer. It's more... I could keep them, and I'd really be gambling on the big home run play. And especially as you've started using your animals, you're like, I only have 2 animals I can even score. So, like, do I really re-roll them? Maybe I don't get... It doesn't matter if I get all the sausages if I don't get the right animals. Yeah.
So there you go, Ryan. That is my
very surprising
number 3
hit
of the month.
Nice. My number 3 is one that I have been interested in trying for a very long time. You ended up picking it up on my recommendation, and I had the chance to try it with you. I actually also played it without you later in the vacation. This is Veil of Eternity.
Oh, right.
And I just really enjoyed what this game is doing. Now, there are so many games that fall into this category of kind of like engine building, card comboing, you know, cards with different effects, and like trying to find synergies between cards, to the point where it is really hard to kind of stand out in that genre. And like, why do I need another game that's like that? Like, what is this game doing differently? I think Veil of Eternity does some very clever things to kind of differentiate itself and make it a unique experience. The biggest one being this whole, you can only have 4 money tokens at any given time, and they come in 1, 3, and 6 currency. So if you have 4 1s, like, you're at capacity for, you can't take more 1s, you know, and if you get like a 3, you'd have to discard a 1. And when you pay for the cost of cards, you don't get change.
Yeah.
Those two rules, I mean, that like makes up a lot of the interest in the game, in this efficiency puzzle of how do I manage when I'm getting stuff, and like, is it worth me paying this at an inefficient cost because I'm not going to get change for this thing, but I would get this thing out now. And a lot of the card effects then are able to play into that system of like different things. And so that's all really great. But then I think the whole like card drafting mechanism, I think is a really strong thing that powers it as well. Because instead of a lot of these games, you'd have like your own hand or these types of things. Here it's all open information. Like you deal out twice the number of cards equal to twice the number of players, and they go around kind of this central board according to what like suit they are, which is kind of nice for teaching the game because everything's open information. So like you explain what every card does to everybody. Because the second game I didn't play with you, I was teaching it. It was just a 2-player game with our cousin once removed. Is that what that is?
Yes.
We were at a big family reunion. I don't know who I was playing with.
But might have been a total stranger.
But I think he's what? Is he 9 or 10 or something
like that? Yeah.
So and he's pretty good at games and stuff. But it was really nice teaching this game to like every round I would put out cards and I could just explain exactly what every card did, and we both knew. But then you do this nice little like snake draft thing where you're putting tokens onto which cards you want to reserve as only options for you. Now I've only played it 2 players, but it works really well even 2-player of like, okay, I'm either getting the first and the last pick or I'm getting those 2 in the middle.
Right.
But it's then interesting because then when it comes to your turn, then you get to decide how you want to use those ones that you reserved. So you could, every different section, you can just like discard it and get the coins, the currency, which especially early in the game when you don't have other ways to do it, that's going to be the only way you really can play cards.
Yeah.
Or you can add the card to your hand and end up being able to play it.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was a really strong, interesting thing, and kind of the way it escalates over the rounds because, you can only have as many cards out as the current round. I just had a lot of fun with this one, and like where it falls in kind of the, weight, complexity to teach it, but also the time to play, but the interest in the decisions.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued by it. Before I recommended it to you, it was very high on my wish list. I think it's staying up there. Like I definitely, it's one I'm interested in, and I probably right now don't have as many opportunities to play it. It's definitely a good 2-player game. It would be good with more than 2.
Well, your son someday will.
I know. Once he can read, man, the world opens.
The world really does.
Yeah. But it really is one that I think is going to still be on my wish list. I know they've released an expansion for it, which only makes me more interested because this is the type of game that
I've heard it's really
adding
good
more cards
too.
Into the deck and stuff is just going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. This game, in some ways, the beauty of it is it's just some very specific rules, but it's interesting because the rules are actually all restrictions. Like, you can only have 4 physical tokens of currency. You don't get change, things like, you can only have the number of cards as the current round. Like, it's all restrictions. And I don't know, like, they're just really well-designed restrictions that I feel like then open up a whole system that they can now play with. Like you were saying, a lot of the abilities, okay, I can only have 4, physical pieces of currency. A lot of the abilities are like, oh, now your ones, treat your ones like 6s. And it's like, okay, now suddenly like that amazing. Totally, or I can exchange this currency for this and stuff like that. So I don't know, I think that's really cool when a game can land on just like a really clever rules mechanism that's simple, but then now opens possibilities. Like you can really run with it and do some really cool things with the card system out of that. So I agree, Ryan. It was that one's been really, really sweet. So thank you for the recommendation.
Yeah. And I think it speaks to the quality of like the card effects and stuff. Because sometimes in a game, if you are leaning into restrictions for where the interest is going to come from, it's easy for it to get to the point where it's like actually constraining the fun a little bit.
True. Yeah.
But here it does a good job of balancing those constrictions, which you still get to feel like you do cool, powerful things within those restrictions. And it almost feels better because of the restrictions. Like when you're able to get something going that's really good. So yeah, I think this one's got a lot going for it. And I really enjoyed both my plays of it.
That's sweet. I forgot you got to play it a second time. So cool to hear you enjoyed it that much. Very nice, Ryan. My number 2 for the month was a head-to-head game that we got to play against each other. I think I've mentioned, maybe this might have been on my top plays actually of last month too, but a game that is not new to our hearts, that's for sure. I
think actually in last month's we advertised that this matchup might happen.
I know. I think we did. We teased it, and we felt like we had to deliver. And boy, did this matchup did it deliver. I will say, might have been the longest play of this that we've ever had in our lives, which is saying something. But my number 2 of the month is going to go to Summoner Wars. So Ryan, we grew up playing Summoner Wars. Like we originally got, I think in the first edition, like you got kind of the core decks. Then we ended up getting that master set, which had a bunch of decks. And I think I ended up in kind of our tragic split, aka the infamous split.
Yeah, the great game collection division of 20.
It was sad.
2012 or something.
I think I took it, and it just wasn't really. It wasn't getting. You play a game a ton, wasn't getting played much. So I ended up selling it. But then this new edition, comes out, and after a lot of time, kind of, you forget how good a game is, and really liked the changes they made. So I ended up acquiring this second edition. But man, we got to play it, and I am like almost like rediscovering my love for Summoner Wars.
Yeah.
And so we got to play. I was the Phoenix Elves, and Ryan was the Fallen Kingdom, which I believe are both. Those aren't like new.
They definitely changed them a lot.
Stuff. Yeah.
But I think they may have been factions in the old one.
But man, was that a tense game against each other, which when like Summoner Wars, when you have two people that are just, equal head to head, man, it just creates for a fun game. And this one was really interesting because the way the game started, like I thought I really felt like so I was going to beat you. Like I was like feeling really great, strong at the start. But the whole thing with your Fallen Kingdom race is you are really good at bringing people back out of your discard pile back from the dead. And you specifically, forget which common units you had that were the ones that could specifically do that.
It was like whenever they killed one of yours, instead of taking the magic, I could bring back one of those units from the discard pile.
And
which I went into a stretch where I did that a lot, which was really hurting my magic because I didn't have a lot to, but I was like, it really is helping me kind of, because I was definitely out. I was going ahead in tempo. I was going through my deck so much faster.
Oh, I know. So I was like, Ryan is going to be just toast here in no time.
Yeah, but so I kind of leaned into just like, can I keep things alive with this and keep it going? And it kind of just wore down to the point where there was a turning point for sure.
Yeah, the turning point was I ran out of my deck.
Yeah. Well, there was a point where I realized I think I can last out until Daniel runs out of his deck and be in a better position.
Yeah, and the key mistake was I needed to like those units that can bring people back. I needed to target
Squash them
and go after them. And I don't think I realized how strong I was. And my faction was kind of cool because I had those Ember guys, like the ones that can. I forget the Ember guys that I can spawn them either next to a wall or next to an existing one out there.
Yeah, so, that caught me a couple times.
Yeah, and another mistake that I made, I should have gone for it, is I had one of those guys out there that I could like move, and I think I could get to like your summoner, and I had another one in my hand, and I thought about like just rushing you.
Yeah.
And I think it would have been worth it. I was like, ugh, like I needed some protection on the back end. So I sat back, but I don't know, Ryan, I'm curious your thoughts, like the changes that they made, some of the things that come to mind, obviously with the dice, there's now you have kind of a bonus for melee attacks versus ranged. Five of the sides will hit on melee versus 4 in ranged. Walls can now only be placed in your back 3 rows, which is a little different. And I'm trying to think. I think another thing, they made the common units better in the game. So
because now the health points have been scaled a little bit. I think it used to be common units were always like one hit killed them. Yeah. Where now a lot of them might have 2 or 3 health, and that makes a huge difference. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious kind of your thoughts on that.
It's hard for me to compare them. I actually was just looking up. My last play of Summoner Wars before this one was almost 10 years prior.
So you don't remember?
I mean, it has really been a long
you were
time
a whole different
since
person
I've played
then.
this game.
Yeah.
But I think they did an awesome job with the new edition. Like you said, you're kind of reminded of how good the core game system is. One thing that I don't know that I'd ever really thought about before, but in our game, coming back to it and not being familiar with the factions, appreciated about the game is most of the deck is made up of like the same common units. Like you have like maybe 3 different ones.
Yeah, I think it's about 3.
Which is really helpful when you're playing an opponent that you maybe don't know their deck, because you start to learn the things, and it's like, okay, I know what those guys do. And then when the champions come out, which are kind of the unique ones, well, they only come out rarely. And when one comes out, there's usually only one that you need to remember. So I think it does a good job of not being overwhelming. Like they very easily could have fallen into the trap of like, your faction's full of like all kinds of unique cards and stuff. Well, and that would make it really hard to
that's
play
a good
against.
point, because this wasn't a top play of my month, but I actually played a game of Keyforge last night, and that game is a little harder because like every card that comes out, you got to kind of, okay, what does this card do? What does this card do?
Cards,
and when you got a whole row of guys, okay, what do they all do again? A little bit easier in this game to quickly learn what the units units
so
do.
maybe add another game to the list of when my son can read, perhaps.
Ryan just got this long list. Well, I don't think we said, Ryan, but actually no, we mentioned that you ended up outlasting me in the
I think we implied it. I did squeeze out the victory.
Ryan squeezed out the victory
after a brutal hour and 40 minutes of head to head.
That is,
it has to be the longest game we've ever had.
That's actually crazy, but super fun. So that was good to get that one.
Nice. My number 2 is another game that was new to me and in your collection. And actually, I guess technically new to you, one that you had very much been itching to get to the table because you've had it sitting on your shelf for a while. This is the sequel, spiritual successor to Dwellings of Eldervale, and this is Andromeda's Edge.
Oh, this warms my heart, Ryan.
Yeah, Daniel so wanted me to like this game. So when I played Dwellings of Eldervale with Daniel, it did not go well.
Well, this is why it warms my heart. I felt terrible after our Dwellings of
which was
Eldervale game.
It was like self-inflicted wounds of not remembering rules and stuff, but it was the kind of things where like you do a whole plan only to find out that nothing in your plan worked because you forgot something about the game.
That's not a good feeling.
That game, that definitely soured it. And I was kind of overall, even like trying to push that out of my mind, I was like good with it, but wasn't like over the moon with it, which was kind of my expectation. Because usually these kind of more hybrid games that kind of bring in the Euro and Ameritrash together don't tend to be my favorites. I tend to like them. But I was very interested to try Andromeda's Edge because I'd heard a lot of things that had been tweaked in the system. And so we got to play a 2-player game of this, and I will say it went much better. Obviously, from the rules perspective, there still was one thing I messed up at the end, which there are some of those little cards. You'll probably see them in the pictures here. There's some small font in this game.
True.
And there's the little blue cards that way in little font it says end game, and I missed that because
that's important to know.
We hadn't talked about it, and so I just assumed it worked like all the other cards that like whenever you take your people back, you can take these actions. So we had to walk back a few things of like, okay, I think I took these when I shouldn't have, but not nearly as catastrophic as the first game. And we had a nice close game, and I had a hard time remembering Dwellings of Eldervale. So it's really hard for me to like compare, but I had a really good time with this. I felt like whatever little things weren't quite working for me in Dwellings of Eldervale felt like they just kind of like it
Yeah.
was like on that razor's edge. It was like Dwellings of Eldervale was like almost
Right.
there. And this feels like it got over the hump for me to where I was like, okay, I like this game. It's got such an interesting core thing of kind of this worker placement that you're going out, but your worker placement is like needing to stay connected or using the ranges of your ships. And then your worker placement is also determining like where you might come into conflict with other players or these other NPC spaceship guys that come onto the map. And the combat is like dice. It's like not deterministic.
Yeah.
Though you have a lot of control over it. And I do like the change they made in this.
With targeting.
Yeah, the number of ships plus if you have any targeting effects.
That was a huge change. Yeah.
Yeah, basically makes it because the whole thing is like you get to roll dice equal to your number of ships, and then it's like whoever has the highest number.
Yeah.
And so if you face somebody with one ship and dwellings or
they-
one unit,
Yeah.
and they get
roll
a six,
they might
you
just
could
wipe your
roll
whole
three
thing.
fives and two
Yeah.
fours, but you'll lose the battle. Whereas here they added this targeting mechanism that the number of ships you have is like your base targeting. And that basically means that none of your dice can roll below that value. So if you have two ships...
To a max of 5.
To a max of 5.
Yeah.
So it never gets completely deterministic.
Right.
But if you have two ships, that basically means you roll any ones, you get to keep re-rolling them until they're not ones.
Yeah.
And that's a huge thing. Like if you have 3 ships, or I had a point where I got one of my upgrades, one of my special upgrades for like my destroyer or whatever. Had like +2 targeting. Well, that's really, really good.
That's
I had
huge.
a battle I could go into everything 1 to 3. I think I was able to re-roll. But there's still a chance, right? Like it
Yeah.
still leaves the excitement open of like if you get all 4s and 5s and the other person gets a 6, like you still can lose. But it feels a little bit more balanced than it was in Dwellings.
Yeah.
But yeah, then it's got this whole interesting thing that you're trying to get out these what were dwellings and Dwellings of Eldervale. I don't know what they call them here. Monoliths or something.
Yeah, that's a good... I forget what they're called.
So it's basically, at different locations, you would have to pay whatever cost to turn one of your base ships into whatever structure.
Yep.
Which is really good for points because you like score for like things that are next to it.
Right.
I forgot that when I was building my first one that those... what were like the agents?
Yeah. I think they might be called agents.
That being closer to those, you're going to score
leaders
more
or
points
something like that.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
it was leaders. But so it's an interesting thing of kind of like trying to compete over where you can get those out because each tile can only have that done once there, but you also lose one of your workers when you do it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of interesting things happen there on the map, but then there's this whole you can decide to recall your workers or you'll eventually need to. And that's when you get to recall them and place them on this card tableau that you're building up to take other actions and things, which it makes the return phase fun. It's kind of like
fun.
your production phase, but it's a production phase you have control over because you probably can't do everything.
Yep.
So it's like, what do I care about the most? And that's very fun to be getting those cards and trying to decide which ones, how do I want to build up these engines?
Well, especially because you can, on each row, that you put one of your physical pieces, you can then spend energy to activate
do extra
So
actions.
if you have a lot of energy, I mean, you could activate.
And I don't remember if Dwellings... I think Dwellings had something with the, like, you could slot... It had wild spots that you could slot things,
It
like
did,
Vistos
yeah.
with the planets. But I don't know if Dwellings had something like how the rows are so different in this one. Like
Yeah.
your green row, it's all one thing.
It's all connected.
Like if you put a person there, you get all the rewards.
Yeah.
Then the next one, it had like these connectors that you could slot the moons that you got, which moons are basically some benefit that you could just spend it and get the benefit. But if you save it, you could slot it into a place like this. And that made it, because it's in between the cards, you get it with either of the
card,
actions.
right.
And so that was a very cool dynamic. And so I liked how some of that worked and it was different. I will say I liked how all those were on the board in
Yeah.
this game instead of... I felt like in Dwellings there was a lot of stuff that was kind of over there.
Yeah.
And I had to kind of go
Right.
and look and like, what
it's
are my
all,
options
it's all
here?
together on one board, versus kind
it
of
felt
different.
easier for me to digest kind of what was
That's a good
going on.
point. Yeah.
So yeah, I had a lot of fun with this. Obviously, it's got some things that we like in games, like the different factions, and you get some variable ship upgrades at the beginning. So like you're always going to have kind of a different start. The map is going to be different every game. I really liked the, and again, I don't remember how it worked in Dwellings, but I liked how the enemies came out kind of with the events, and you don't know which one's going to come out
Yeah,
first
the
or
event
which
deck, that's
version
all
it's going
new.
to be.
Yeah, the whole event deck and whatnot.
So this is one that had me going, okay, I want to play this one again now that I feel like I kind of know it and I'm not going to make some of the mistakes I made the first play. And even one that I would say is on the wish list somewhere. I don't know that it's like super high. It's obviously
It's on the never buy, but it's on there.
Yeah. there is one of those on BGG. It's like do not buy.
Do not buy.
As a
Do you
wish
have
list
anything
option.
on your do not buy list on
just to
BGG?
remind you, in case in the future you ever think about buying this, do
Do
not.
not buy. Yeah, for
We've already
future
determined.
self.
Yeah, it's always hard to add big games like this to the
that's what I was gonna
collection
say.
when
That's-
it's hard. There's a lot of big games that I, I'm trying to get to the table. But I would say a very positive first impression.
Yeah, no kidding, right? I mean, like you're saying, this is the most competitive category. And so for you to even say, like, it's considered.
Yeah, for time and complexity. It does differentiate a little bit as being kind of more of a hybrid game, which I maybe
the
have
style's
fewer
different, right.
of those. But yeah, as far as
Right.
like the situations where it could
Yeah.
get played, it's pretty competitive.
Yeah, Ryan. Well, I'm just going to step right on.
I was like, if this missed Daniel's top three, I don't know,
You're propping
Daniel.
me up here. Andromeda's Edge is my number one play of the month. And Ryan, I was really excited for this one because, got Dwellings. And I would agree with you that Dwellings was, and
You liked it more than me.
I did like it more than you, and I liked a lot of things about it, but there were some things that I just was kind of like, trying to figure out why it wasn't just hitting. Like I mean, a game like this, it's gotta hit. And I remember seeing some stuff about Andromeda's Edge and seeing the changes, and I was like, man, I really feel like some of these changes refine those things that I maybe had issues with, like the cards that you build out on the side, that for the return phase, those actions. I don't know, in Andromeda's Edge, it just feels like it works so much better with how you kind of build that out. I really liked that part of it. For me, playing this with you, it was like, yes, that's the experience I'm looking for. And I still had kept Dwellings, just because I kind of wanted to see which one do I like more, keep the one. So I think Dwellings is going to be ending up on a cold list, sadly. But
which I will say, for people watching this, I don't think we would say everybody is going to prefer Andromeda's Edge to Dwellings.
No.
And it's we get it, it is always hard when you like a new version comes out of a game you really like, and it's like your version's still great, and you can still.
I think there's
love
people
it,
who
but I think
like
for us,
Dwellings better. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for us, both of us would agree that Andromeda's like took it another notch.
Yeah, and here's one thing that I was honestly kind of blown away with, because I know there's a deluxe edition of this game, and of course, always get tempted by that. Oh my goodness, the production quality of just the base game, I was super impressed with. Like,
I think standees get kind of a bad rap.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, you could get standees or miniatures, but a lot of times you're getting unpainted miniatures, so it's a lot of gray on the board. Versus the standees that are usually like beautifully
bright
illustrated.
colors, yeah.
So there is something about it that it's like, man, it takes up less space. It's kind of the aesthetic really is consistent with the rest of the game, and this is a beautiful game.
Yeah.
Like the color
so
palette
good
and
on the
everything is
board.
very vibrant, and I came away from this going like, I feel like I prefer how this looked to if there were big unpainted miniatures. Now, obviously, for someone who paints or it could change it.
Well, and speaking of the size, oh my gosh, on the shelf, the base Andromeda's Edge is like a third of the size of Dwellings. I mean, it's on the shelf, it takes up a small amount of space, and that's kind of nice.
I am just hoping that the industry keeps moving back in this direction. We went through this era of, with games like Gloomhaven, and then a lot of these games that were having big box editions. That's such a new kind of thing in the last, that it felt like we're moving towards this bigger boxes is almost desirable. I can tell you, for me, it is not desirable. I want the smallest box that can contain the experience.
Which this game achieves that. It is,
and I think this is a good example of big game, but not the box doesn't have to be so huge.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting in this one because you can actually choose the length of the game that you want to play. So we actually played the shortest of the 3 options, which I don't know. I didn't. We maybe could have done the, in the future done the medium, but it felt good.
I think we were at like 2 hours, but we were definitely going slow, both being kind of newer to it.
So I thought, that was cool, but man, it really, it checks off the variability that we're wanting in games. The factions felt cool, the different ships and whatnot. So I am very, very excited about this one. I will say that play, gosh, Ryan, I so prefer when you're teaching a game, because when this was an example of going into a game where like I kind of knew the rules but didn't know them great. And that is just stressful when we're trying to
and it's stressful
we had a time crunch
kind of had limited time.
Yeah. So fortunately, and then I'm like, I've got dwellings in the back of my mind and this like awful rules mistake and trying not to have that happen. So
it made my listing. It's like a true redemption story.
This is the full arc.
Arc. For those who've been with us for the whole journey. Yeah. Very nice. We'll see if it's definitely one I'm interested in trying again. And we'll see if in the long run, maybe it ends up in my collection. Who knows?
Wow.
So before I say what my number 1 is, I want to give a picture into just how competitive this month was for slots on this. Because here's some games that didn't make it. I played Elder Tor, which I haven't played
played Elder
in a long
this
time.
Month? Oh my gosh.
Played Elder Tor.
Wow.
We were both in a 4-player game of Endeavor Deep Sea, which I really enjoyed that game.
Was good.
We were in a 6-player game of Heat Pedal to the Metal.
I was hoping you would include that one. Dang
it. Almost made mine.
Dang it.
We played Innovation Ultimate together twice, I think.
We did.
On the trip. We played a 5 or 6-player game of Planet Unknown.
Oh, it's
These
not
are
that
heavy
one
hitting.
either.
I even played A Message from the Stars, which is a game I've been wanting to get to the table for a long time. But here's the thing. When we do our top plays, I want it to be something that any game could be the top plays if it delivers on it. And not necessarily just leaning into like, oh, well, this is my favorite game and I had an okay play of it, so it's going to make the list.
Right.
And here's the thing. It had to be Sausage Sizzle. It has to be.
Oh my gosh.
If I'm looking at the month and I'm going, what games were the top plays?
Yeah.
Sausage Sizzle. And I think if I had to pick one specifically, I actually don't know if you were in this game, but it was a big full game. It may have been the first or second time we played at the bigger family reunion. And it just was filled with everything we said, like the exciting moments. It was like constant. We were having these exciting things. The winner set the new record in the game. We had a really tense final round where people are needing to go for broke, but then getting it, the 3 animals with sausages. They get 21 points. Now the person that's in the lead has to do well.
Yeah.
And the group dynamic that this little dice game created for that group of not only 5, but we had 3 maybe spectators that kind of came in and started kind of understanding what was watching. I was like, it couldn't have delivered better for what it is.
Yeah.
And this is a game that it's a reprint of an older game. It came out in 2012, I think.
Yeah.
But this 25th Century Games picked it up and did kind of a nice new edition of it. And I don't think it's super highly rated, and I can see why. The type of people rating board games, it's a simple dice game. But man, there are certain games that are greater than the sum of their parts when it hits the table with the people. Right. It's like the game plus the people is what gives you the experience. And this with the right group, a group that's gonna banter a little bit, laugh, get into each other's turns. Like you said, the game is hardwired to deliver those exciting dice rolling moments consistently.
Yeah.
And so, I just, this was I had a hard time ordering my list this time. And then I was like, at first it was just Sausage Sizzle has to make my top 3.
Yeah.
But the more I thought about it, I was like, what game delivered better for what it is than Sausage Sizzle?
Right.
So,
yeah, it's, honestly, I feel like if you're watching this video, you have to at least go, it's so cheap. And
it's $10-15 or something.
I don't know. At some point, it's how can you not pick up a game like that? That, like you said, just delivers better, so much more than the cost of it, you know?
Yeah, I think, for someone who mostly plays with maybe the same group and that group has very specific tastes, like it may not make sense for you. We come definitely from a perspective of trying to have a collection that covers every situation we could have and being able to really deliver the right game for every situation. And when you're looking through that lens, a game like this is so huge because it's so easy to teach to anybody. Like I would feel comfortable teaching this to my grandparents. Yeah. Which there's not a lot of games. Too. Yeah. Oh my gosh. You would also. Yeah. That's at least 4 grandparents.
Oh my gosh.
Covered here. And that's just. When I look at my collection and like start limiting it by filters like that of like, it's like, well, there's not that many games now in that category. But then can also like be exciting and get the group, just having fun together, which is really what you just want when you pull out a game like that. Yeah. I think this got pulled out like 7 times on our less than 2 week trip.
I think one of the biggest compliments to this game is, people would play it and then we would, whether it's the same day or the next day, ask, okay, what are we feeling? And it felt like almost all the time it was like sausage sizzle. In fact, we had to almost a little bit be like, actually, we could play something else. But like, man, the fact that people want to play it, again and again, I'm sure eventually, you play it enough and maybe you start to get a little tired of it. But like, gosh, you really can't imagine a world where it hits better than it did.
Yeah. And it's good to remember as the, maybe more gamer-minded people that most other people that aren't really, really into games aren't looking for how can I think really hard. It's just not necessarily what they're looking for. And so sometimes, games like this, it's like that's exactly what they want to sit down and do is play this type of game.
Totally.
So kudos to a month of sizzling those sausage.
A month filled with crossovers, which means less games, but the games are higher recommended. So if you want to check out any of those games, including if you want to sizzle some sausage, that's it. Click the link below. And if you want to watch some more videos, hey, look at this. We've got another one here. We will see you in the next one.